Good evening and welcome to Raise the Bar, the Sky High and Fly Jump Camps podcast. I'm your host, Troy Haynes, and tonight I am going to have as my guest a young man like myself named Ron Lee. Ron is a former high jumper and a former coach. He's much like myself. His son, Sean Lee, just finished up his career at UCLA. Sean was I believe, a two-time state champion in the high jump, coached by his dad throughout most of his career. And he won twice, jumped 7'3" in high school, and accomplished many age records along the way. And I see Ron has checked in to my waiting room, and there he is.
Hey, how's it going?
All right, man. How you doing?
Good.
Good. It's been a couple of years, hasn't it?
Yeah,
A minute or two.
I've been out of the game for a little while. Yeah.
Out of the game, as it were. Yeah, I was just telling everybody a little bit about your background on my preamble. So we'll just continue on. Where did you I know I've talked to you about it before, but growing up, how did you get into high jumping before you started, obviously high jumping and coaching high jump? How'd your athletic career start and where?
My dad's in the military, so I was in Alabama
Okay.
in the ninth grade, and they had the high jump pits in the gym during gym class, and they made everybody try the events, and I did it. I liked it, and went out for the track team that year. I think I jumped 5'9" my freshman year.
Nice.
Yeah, in Alabama, and then we moved to Oregon, Grants Pass, Oregon, and
Right.
we had a really good high jumper there. He was a 6'10" and a quarter jumper. He won state.
Right.
He won state my junior year, so I learned from him. It was a really his name was Jody King.
Okay.
Pretty good jumper. So then the next year I think I jumped 6'2" that year. Then my junior year I jumped 6'9", took 7th place at state, and then my senior year I jumped 6'11", took first. So I was state champion senior year.
Yeah. Awesome. And then you moved, because I remember competing against you. I graduated from UCLA in '86, and then in '88 I was training for the trials and going to meets all over the place. And I remember bumping into you at some of the Cal State LA meets. So where did you do your college jumping?
Yeah, so after I graduated in Grants Pass, my dad was a police chief in Northern Cal, so I wound up moving down there. I went to Cal State Chico.
Okay.
And I jumped there, but I got hurt my back, landing off the pit.
Nice.
At one of the meets. I think it was Hayward, Cal State Hayward.
Nice.
And so I got hurt. And then I finished there. I didn't like that area. So
Yeah.
I moved south to LA with my grandmother and started school there. I went to I jumped at Glendale College.
Okay.
For a year. And I think I jumped 7'2" there. I can't remember. It's been too long. But then I went to Cal State LA, finished there.
Now, when you were at Glendale, just as a quick aside, was Lee Balkin coaching there yet at Glendale?
No, it was still John Tansley.
Really?
That was one of the reasons why I went there, just to jump, because I read his book, The Flop book, and yeah.
Well, that opens up a ton of questions in my head. So I've always wanted to either talk with Tansley or who's the coach for Carl? His name's escaping me right now. Carl Lewis's coach. He used to
Tom Tollett. Tom Tellez.
Tom Tellez.
Yeah.
He's getting up there. He's in his 80s now. Um, yeah, those are some names I would love to have conversations with, if they're still able to have conversations. But so yeah, Lee Balkin, I think, was probably still competing in '86 when I was a senior. I know he still was, and he had a quite a run after he left UCLA. Jumped 7.6, 7.5 or 7 or something like that. And then I know he's been at Glendale for a long time. So that was just I was thinking unique skill sets that you got to learn from. So Tansley, like you said, wrote a book and had a lot of great jumpers. So that was awesome. And then so that when you jumped 7.2, that was in junior college, and then you kept jumping at Cal State LA. And then I remember jumping against you then, and then I bumped into you at a Trabuco Hills meet a long time later. And I remember we were both coaching by then. And then if I remember right, we started jumping one day. We were like, yeah, let's get out there, jump. And I think we both were still jumping at like 6'4", messing around with 6'4" or 6'6" or something like that after the kids were done. And then I didn't see you for a long time after that. And then, I'd started hearing about Sean Lee, Sean Lee. And everybody started hearing the name Sean Lee, and he's breaking every, age record that I remember, in the state of California. I don't know if it was just California, if these are national records or, what, but I just seem like every year, like clockwork. So the question that rushes to my head is, number one, I'm sure you remember all that stuff. How did that get started? Did Sean just take right to it? That knowing you, I can't see you being the push guy. So did he just gravitate towards it on his own, or how did it go?
No, I retired from high jump for a long time. And then I think I was like 30, 38 or 39, went to an all-comers meet, and I want to jump in like 6'6".
Mm-hmm.
So, you get that bug going
Sure.
again. And so I started working out. I competed at Masters. I was actually, I jumped 6'7" as a Masters, so over 40, jumped 2 meters. And then, I was started out with my daughter. I took her to when I was practicing, so she got interested in jumping. So she started jumping at like 9 years old. And then, of course, my son saw her jumping, so he wanted to do it.
Right.
So I actually bought a pit, a little 6 feet by 12 feet pit.
Mm-hmm.
Put it in the garage. So we pulled out in the driveway, and they were running off the street, practicing, jumping in the front of the house. And so he started at 7 years old, and then just messing around. And then at 8 years old, they have age groups for the youth track. So I think it's 9 and 10. So when he was 8, he went to nationals competing against 9 and 10-year-olds.
Right.
I think he took 7th place. Then when he turned 9, then he won 6 straight national championships, junior Olympic national championships. He actually attempted national records at 30 meets. Wow. And he was successful at 12 of them. And he broke every national record and every national championship meet record from 10 years old up to 14. So, and then he started high school.
Right. And then you were at Trabuco Hills. Now, you and I have done a lot of talking in the past, because anybody that has listened to this podcast or knows me personally knows that I'm always wanting to learn from people who are very skilled at what they do. And, some people could look at Sean, those of you out there listening to Raise the Bar here, and I'm talking with Ron Lee, the dad and father/coach of Sean Lee, who, as you just heard, broke many national records and age records along the way up until the time he hit high school. And you had a successful coaching career that started before Sean. And, some people would say, well, maybe, what does this guy know? Maybe he's just finding really talented kids. Because if you see Sean, like the first time I met your son, I'd heard his name, of course, but I never saw him growing up. So I see him as a junior, I think, or maybe even that senior year when you guys were at Tribuco and I was at Santa Margarita. I remember we always had that dual meet, and you came over and I think you had Sean wait till everybody was out. And then he puts the bar up to 6'8" and just runs up and sails over it. And you see Sean leave. For those of you that have never seen Sean, he's 6'8". He's like an antelope, right? Super tall. He's really, really fast, very European style, single arm, takeoff a mile out, all those things that I love watching about European single armor. So, somebody might go, well, of course he's jumping high. Look at him. he's built, perfect build, right? But you and I know it takes a lot more than that. So what was it? I know you throw us out another name. The name that I'm thinking of that you mentioned to me was who was the other kid that Steele? Steele was coached by you?
No, Harrison Steed.
Harrison Steed, that's it. Harrison Steed.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the running back at UCLA, Steele. Okay, that's the wrong guy.
Actually, you know what? If we back up, yeah, Sean grew about a foot in 3 years from 7, 8, 9. So when he was younger, he wasn't that tall. He wasn't taller than, he wasn't the tallest kid in the class.
Right.
When he was 10 years old, he broke the national record a few times. He jumped 5'3". That was 7 inches over his head.
Right.
So for a kid like that, jumping 7 inches over your head, it was technique, and so, yeah, you think, yeah, he's like 6'9" now.
Wow.
I think, yeah, that's why he's jumping so high, but
right.
He's been jumping high when he was little too.
Yeah.
But yeah, Harris, actually I only got involved in high school coaching because I was coaching my kids, and then their youth club was working out at J. Sarah, and Marty Dugard, the famous author, he said, "Hey, if you're here, you want to coach the high jumpers for me?" And he said, well, we don't have any jumpers yet, but we got brand new pits. And so, yeah, they had this kid named Harrison Steed. He came out, he was a freshman. He could jump 5'6" when he started. And yeah, he wound up jumping 6'6" that year, got hurt. And then his sophomore year, he jumped 7'1" in one state.
Right.
And then, some injuries, this and that. And, but yeah, he was a really good jumper too.
Now
and he did a lot of this. He did a lot of the same workouts that Sean did, but then with Sean, I kind of perfected the training. So
these are the things that I've been wanting to know for a long time. And you and I have talked about it a little bit, but and I still have pictures of the box that you made for Sean, that one drill. And but my thoughts and suspicions are this basic topic that we're broaching, Ron, is the training of an athlete to be exceptional. Now, you trained Sean. He obviously learned good techniques from you on the way up. Jumping 7'3" in high school here in the state of California is way up on the list. I had the honor of jumping against Maurice Crumby, at Arizona. He jumped 4 or 5, I can't remember, in high school. Lee Balkin still has the state meet record of 7'3", right, at the state finals. But 7'3" is pretty rarefied air. There's not a lot of high school kids that have jumped a lot higher than that. So, you've got your son jumping at a level that 7'3" is NC2A qualifying for most of the time, at least the regional. It took 222 to get to the NC2As when I was in college at UCLA in 1986. So, you're right on the doorstep there. And that was the old thing before they started doing the regionals. So, you had to figure he's going to go. And then the question that pops into my head, is, and I think it's due to I'll ask it before I answer. What is it about having these young kids, the the young high schoolers that are, probably a couple years for the guys from putting on their max weight, let's say. I remember when I was a senior, I was 6'3" and I was 180 pounds. And I played free safety on the football team. My mom was always worried that I was going to die. She's like, "Oh, you're so skinny. You're so skinny. You're going to get killed." I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm not going to get killed. I've been playing football for a while now, and I keep my head up when I tackle, and whatever. But I was pretty thin. I think it led to my high school success because I didn't really lift a lot. I wasn't particularly fast. I think around a 5 flat 40. And, I jumped 6'10" 3/4. Okay, so what? Well, that first year at UCLA, I put on 15 pounds and I jumped 6'8". Like I couldn't get off the ground. And I'm a big believer in strength to weight ratio. We've talked about this before. So, if you're really, really strong and you're fast and you're light, those are deadly combinations, right? And if you're tall on top, holy crap. So you get a lot of things going there. So, what is it that we get these kids that are just so talented and they jump 6'10", they jump 7 feet, 7'1", and they go off to college and then, nothing happens to them. I don't know what happened with Harrison Steed, for instance. Steele, what'd you say his name was?
Steed, Harrison Steed.
Harrison Steed.
Well,
I remember
what
watching
happened?
him jump. Where did he go, and how high did he jump after high school?
He got a full ride to Cal, and he got there, and they had a set of jumpers there. They're all power jumpers.
Right.
Harrison, I call a power jumper a concentric strength jumper, and Harrison was a speed jumper, or I call that eccentric strength jumper.
Mm-hmm.
He got there and he's with a bunch of power jumpers, and they're telling him to slow down, and having him lift weights.
Right.
You lift weights, you gain weight. And it was the same thing with my son. And, I'm friends with Randall Cunningham, the football player.
Mm-hmm.
He told me when Sean was younger, probably in early high school, he said, "Ron, don't let anybody else coach Sean." And what happened is they go to college and the college coaches say, "We have our program, you're going to lift weights, you're going to do this, and we're going to take you to the promised land." And then they all tank.
Right.
And so Harrison went there, and when his senior year, I think, he asked me to go to USC at the Pac-12s
mm-hmm.
to coach him. And he was the slowest jumper there.
Wow.
And he was always the fastest with me. And, you keep telling him, okay, you got to speed up. But then he doesn't train like that. He doesn't train for speed. So when he hits the plan, he blows through it, and he can't handle the force.
Right.
And the speed. So yeah, I think he only jumped 6'9". And he jumped 7'1" in high school.
The sophomore year in high school.
Yeah.
That's
crazy.
I mean,
the same thing with my son. He his first year at UCLA, the coach let me be involved in his coaching. So I was coaching him a couple of days a week. He was doing my training plan still. He was not lifting weights. We never lifted weights that much. We did other types of strength training.
mm-hmm.
You don't have to lift weights to strength train. So I'm kind of like out of the box. But so his freshman year, he jumped 7'3", took 6th place in nationals, and then COVID hit. And then by the time he qualified for the trials, what was it, 21?
Yeah.
21 or 22. One of those. But he hurt his foot because we hadn't jumped for so long because of COVID. First day of high jump practice, he hurt his foot, did something to it. So we didn't go to the trials. Then his senior year, he didn't want me to butt heads because they got a new coach. He didn't want me to butt heads. So he said, stay out. So I didn't coach him at all. And, the coach had him lifting weights, and, I don't know if he probably gained some weight, but in high school with me, he was opening up at 6'8". 4 years later, he's opening up at 6'5".
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm like, I went to a meeting. I told him, "What the heck are you doing? You should be opening up at 7 feet by now." Yeah, he opened up at 6'11" with me before
Hmm.
at a national meet. Um, and then he only jumped in high school. He averaged 7'1.5" with me. He jumped his senior year. He jumped 7'1" once indoors,
Yeah.
and it just completely blew his mind. Where he's like done.
Yeah.
So after he graduated, so it's another. But there were two other. There was a state champion 7-footer and another 7-footer at UCLA. They all tanked,
Right.
and it just college, the way they train the athletes, it just ruins them. It's and and the one thing, the record of my son when he was younger and he won 2 state championships. They didn't ask me one question on what his training was, what does he do to make himself successful?
Right.
None of that. They want to completely change everything,
Yeah.
and this is what happens. But yeah, so
It's kind of amazing.
that's
What you're describing is, to me, explains a lot, and it also it raises a lot of questions. It's like, what is this system that we have here in the States? You and I both know, number one, if you're a very talented high jump coach, you're not going to be working at the high school level for the most part. You were a talented high school coach, but some people would say if you're really talented and you're at the top of your profession, you would be making a lot of money. And so you say, well, you had a state champ and you had and unfortunately, Sean came along before the NIL, right? If you guys were in business now, you might be able to get him some kind of compensation packages and stuff like that, right? And say, hey, I got a kid, he's won state already a couple of times, like being a 5A, recruit basketball or football player, right? So you can get some deals, but you look at the state of how it goes. Like when I got to UCLA, I've told this story before. I don't know if I've told you, Ron, but I got to UCLA and, the great Bob Larson was still an assistant coach. The great Jim Bush was still the head coach. And, I got in as a 6'10" jumper and I was number 7 on the depth chart. I remember that. There was all kinds of people that could jump higher, including Dell Davis and Lee Balkin. And when I walked in and shook Bob Larson's hand, he said, "Hey, I'm Bob Larson." He goes, "I'm in control of the high jumpers." And he goes, "I don't know anything about the high jump." He literally told me the first time I met him that he had no idea what to, and he literally never did tell me anything about high jumping. He would come down and watch us, Dell and Lee. They actually had an article in that in June of '82, which was my senior year, when Dell jumped 7.25 up at up in Utah. So he at altitude, right? But he jumped 7.7 or 7.25, and so did Audie, who was from Canada, and he had his sister, right? But he took second, and the article quoted, Dell Davis. It didn't quote Dell, but then it said Bob Larson, his coach, said, So I remember reading that article and going, "Oh, he's coach, Bob Larson." And so, like I said, it was a mind blower to get there and realize that there was nobody that knew anything about the high jump except the high jumpers. And Dell and Lee did, help me quite a bit. They taught me a lot of things. Mostly they kept telling me I was too heavy. They're just like, "You're a buffalo." I was 6'3", 195. Dell was 6'1", about $150, maybe $160. Lee was 6'4", like 150 or 60, real thin and fast. I mean, Lee was like you're talking about. Lee was quick. He could have run on, I think if UCLA was deep at the 400 meters, he was on like the 3rd alternate relay team. Like he could run a quarter in 46, 47 or something like that. The only way I'm doing that is on a motorcycle. So it's like he was light and fast, but there's nobody in control basically, and nobody overseeing the high jumpers that had the workouts. And so, I started doing squats and step ups and lunges and hang cleans and all that, but I was more of a power guy. So it wasn't a bad mix for me, where my only real solitude was to go into the weight room. It was my only recourse, right? It was like, I don't know what else to do here, but just get stronger. That worked for me, but I was a different type, like you're talking about. I'm sure I would be power. So in this long discussion leading up, it's like, well, how do we fix that? I mean, you got to think every year we go across this great nation of ours with our 50 states and there's state championships at every one. And there's going to be kids. Now, some states are weaker than others. You might win your state with 6'6" your senior year in some states. But other states, Texas, California, Florida, high population, lots of athletes, maybe not. Maybe it's 7, maybe it's 7-1, right? Those kids are going to get the rides to the big schools. They're going to go to the SEC, right? They're going to go to Auburn. They're going to go to Tennessee. They're going to go to Arkansas, LSU. Well, like, any one of those would be great, right? Alabama, Georgia. You go to any SEC school, the filter down effect from football is in full effect. Football, basketball, it doesn't matter. The SEC wants to be great at everything. So if you're going to go anywhere and get money, you're going to go there, right? The question is, do they know what they're doing? When you get there, you see a lot of kids that, again, like you said, they just don't, they don't improve, So how do we figure that out, Ron? What would you do with an incoming freshman? And it seems like you said, you're an outside the box thinker with speed. But we both know enough about it. Would that work with every athlete? Do you think that same program, or is it tailored for speed?
No, you have to adjust the program to the jumper.
Yeah.
That's why, like, a lot of the colleges they have it comes down to money, I guess. They have a decathlete coaching the jumps.
Sure.
And in Sean's case, he's being coached by a guy that jumped like 5'10" PR decathlete.
Yeah.
He doesn't, he spent like 3 hours talking to Sean, tell him how he's got this plan, blah, 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 and he's going to take him to the promised land. And he doesn't want to hear anything from me, his dad, and it didn't work. But I think as far as the training goes, like with Sean as an example, you have your muscles are built a certain way, they fire a certain way. If you're a thin speed jumper, in my mind, you don't have to lift weights. There's other ways to gain strength.
Right.
You can do some limited in the fall, which we did, but then when you take somebody a speed jump, eccentric base jumper, and you start lifting weights, it changes the way I believe it changes the way the muscles operate. It slows them down, and they just don't jump. They just don't. They don't do well, and that's exactly what happened with Sean. They tried to change things up, and it doesn't work. You ruin the jumper, basically. Now, for you, you're a power jumper, so yeah, you can go in and lift weights and be successful. But like Harrison, he was 6'3", 150.
Right.
Sean Lee was 6'8", probably 160.
Yeah.
162, something like that.
Perfect. Yeah. Like a bird.
So then, you start lifting, put him on his weight training program, and they have him doing bench press, military press. And I'm like, and they did the same thing with Harrison, the strength trainer at Cal. And Harrison tried to call him out. He was hurt something. So the strength trainer said, well, you need to do all this upper body work. And Harrison said, why do I need to do that? I'm gonna get too big on top and I won't be able to jump. And then the strength trainer called him out in front of everybody and tried to belittle him.
Wow.
But he was exactly right.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
So
That's crazy. Well, the question I have is multiple now, because now we've opened up Pandora's box here. But, when it comes to the strength training that you're mentioning, I'm thinking, here's my traditional program. And I didn't have anybody write me a program, believe it or not, at UCLA till my senior year. I went in and they just changed the weight room guys. A guy named John Arcee was there for a long time. I don't know if John's still there. And Bob Alejo was his second in command. And I went in and I talked to Bob, and it was coming up on my senior year. And I said, hey, I want a weight training program for the summer. So he gave me one sheet. And I remember it had squats and lunges and something else. And the squats were like 5 sets of 8, right? At 65% of your max, whatever that was, which I knew was, like 400 for a full squat. So, okay. So I'm doing sets at 240. And I did that over the summer. I forget what the length of time specified was. And when I came back to school at the start of my senior year, I went to him and asked for a new program. And he gave me this real simple, not very detailed, thing. And I was like, okay, wait a minute, dude. I'm like, no. I want to, because for a base for the summer, I was like, that was okay. But this is, I'm starting to get ramped up. And I'm like, we want to, and I didn't know a whole lot about it, but what it was didn't feel right. So I'm like, I don't want to shift into 5 sets of 5 at 75% and do that for 3 weeks. And it wasn't, I don't even remember. I'm sure just step ups and lunges again, maybe some hang cleans. I don't know. But it was too simplistic for what I was looking for right then. I said, hey, this is my senior year. I want to jump 7.3.5. I want to go to the NC2As. I had all these goals. My personal best before then was 7.2, whatever that, 218. And so we went through all that, and his eyes kind of lit up, because it wasn't just a basic football program. It was like, and plyometrics had just started coming out in true force in 86. We were doing experimental tubing pulls and jumping up onto 54-inch boxes. And of course, they weren't these nice soft boxes where if you miss, your shins are okay. They were the ones you miss on the hard edges and you take 6 inches of skin. So highly motivational boxes. But anyway, the program was what it was. And what I'm thinking was what you were mentioning is like, okay, upper body work and all that. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I believe in strength, to drive my arms up. I believe I should be able to do that faster and faster. So I should probably do some deltoids, stuff, but medicine balls, right? Everybody's done the, and this is the stuff that I see when I'm looking on Instagram. I watch somebody doing their program, and, Brandon Stark, medicine balls or shot puts, straight up, or the straight back ones, or even lunging forward, explosive arm drive. I'm like, well, that's probably good enough, right? You're training those muscles to be fast. And I've even seen him with a big rock, kind of oddly shaped, throwing that back over his head. I'm like, oh, look, it's like, the stone throw. But, something like that. So, and then specifically, let's say with your squats, the question that I had thinking was the same thing you were saying, what does he need to be lifting this heavy weight for? Like, if I do deeper squats, right? If I'm doing a full squat, let's say I'm doing 5 sets of 8, and, I'm going all the way down, all the way back up. Lots of people question, they go, well, why am I bothering to bend my knee that much? When you're talking about these eccentric and power jumpers and everything, like, I watch the single armors, and when they get to the plant, their leg is straight, right? And then you'll see it flex, but just the tiniest bit, and they're up and off of that thing, and they're in the air, Whereas, like you said, someone who doesn't have the strength or is going slower, that knee's it's gonna bend, and they're gonna take longer to get off the ground, right? So the question related to is like, how much, how deep, right? How many sets and reps are we talking about? And when you look at it, I mean, for a football player, it makes sense. The guy's sprinting 40 yards and he's trying to break tackles, and people are hitting him in the legs, and I'd like to have big, thick legs to withstand that kind of stuff. And, I can still be fast and do all kinds of things. But for a high jumper, you put on that much strength, and it's, if you're slower and heavier, like you said, how's it going to work? Harrison Steed goes to where he's opening lower, and jumping lower. So it's like, how'd you go about that, Ron, when you're talking about, your training with Sean? And I know you said you lifted a little bit of weights in the fall, but how do you add strength without, deep squats and step ups and lunges and all that?
Well, first of all, with my training plans, there's different phases, and each phase has a cumulative effect to the next phase. So in the first phase, you're doing general prep, that's general stuff, getting back in shape. Then there's the speed, strength, speed preparation phase. Then there's the eccentric training phase, and then the championship phase. So for lifting weights, see, I wouldn't want my son, who's 6'8", 162 pounds, trying to put 300 pounds of weight or more on his back.
Right.
You wind up, ruining your back.
Yep.
So there are other ways to strength train, and there's different areas. The medicine ball backward throws, though that is an important exercise. And so what I did in the strength phase, or the speed strength phase, we would, well, when he was older, when you're younger, you can use the medicine balls, the little balls.
Right.
He started out with a 4-pound ball,
Sure.
doing backward throws. And he's got a record for each different weight class. And he tries to break his record on each one during the workout. So it's 100%. But we basically had to graduate up. So junior year, we started throwing kettlebells.
Yeah.
So we had like a 15 or 16 pound, there's a 12-pound kettlebell, 15,
20, yeah,
20, 25. We went up to, I went up to like, I think 40 or 45-pound kettlebell.
Yeah.
And, if you're throwing a 45-pound kettlebell 10 yards, that requires a lot of strength.
Absolutely.
And that's speed strength. And that, in my mind, that's one of the exercises that is replacing power cleans or snatch, or squats, because it's an explosive exercise. So we used to do that in the strength training phase, or the speed strength phase. Then when we got to the eccentric phase, we dropped the kettlebells down to like 16-pound. When senior year, so it was a 16-pounder, where he can throw the 16-pounder pretty far.
Yeah.
And so it's more emphasis on speed, the
Right.
speed strength. Whereas when you're using heavy ones, it's strength speed. And so that replaces power cleans for a speed jumper.
Right.
So we used to do that. And I can tell you from personal experience, because I did that. I was jumping as a master's, and I was training Harrison Steed, and we were at the park. They were doing training. I was training myself too. And they were throwing the balls, and I went there and I threw the kettle, and it was like they were only throwing the max at that time. With Harrison, we threw a max of 16-pound,
Right.
16-pound shot put. And I probably threw like 2 sets of 6 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I was dunking. My workout for the day was dunking at the court while
Right.
I was having them do the throws. And I did like, I was dunking, and then I did a couple sets of the throws, and immediately I was jumping way higher on my dunks because
Really?
I went back to dunk. So
Yeah.
that's just a quick results. So I always wanted to like try that. Sean wouldn't do it because he's too shy. I wanted him to try do some backward throws during a competition and
Right.
then go jump.
Yeah.
And I think if you did something like that to prep, you would see a big increase.
Well, that's like an activation thing too, right? Because
Yeah,
you're activating the muscles almost exactly the way you want them to work, right?
yeah,
And at light enough weights where you're not going to tax them. But yeah, you can recover and then go. That's
yeah.
very interesting. And then
So I mean, I'm kind of like an out of the box thinker, and I'm very analytical. My job was legal, and I did have to do a lot of analytical thinking. And so I applied that to high jump. And so when I was a master's jumper, you know, 40 years old, your focus is on trying to increase, but trying not to lose as you
right.
get older.
Yeah.
So I was doing all this research, and, you know, and so that's how I got this out of the box training, because I never lifted weights in college.
Yeah.
I never lifted. And so even, and I can tell you as an example, as a master's jumper, I was lifting at LA Fitness. Okay. I was jumping, 6'6", stuff like that. And I was doing leg presses. I could leg press 950 pounds. I
Right.
had the 45s all the way out to the ends
Yeah.
of the thing, and then it's some on the top.
Right.
It didn't make me jump any higher.
Right.
So that, I mean, I was very strong, but it didn't carry over to the field.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I with my training, and I wrote a book on training. It's like 300 pages. And got all the wisdom that I gathered, for me, and then while I was coaching. And that's one of the things. I have alternative exercises.
Mm-hmm.
So my methodology is perfect the sporting movements,
Right.
and then once you perfect them, increase the intensity on how you carry them out.
Right.
So, and if you the way you train, the way I coach, you break down, there's different phases to the jump. There's the there's the there's the plant, then the rise,
Mm-hmm.
right? You hit the plant, then the rise, and then the layout. And so, I broke some of the drills down to emphasize those.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I don't know if you've seen Zhu Jianhua. I'm sure
Yeah.
you've seen a picture where he's kicking his knee up to touch the volleyball that's suspended in the air.
I remember seeing something like that.
It's a knee drive drill. Well, Sean did that his freshman year. We did that, we did it through high school, but his freshman year, I believe, and you take a 3-step, like your last 3 steps in the approach,
Right.
single leg takeoff, you drive the knee up. And I had a thing that I had made out of PVC, and there's a tennis ball hanging. And so we'd go for height. His freshman year, I know before nationals, he jumped 7'3" at nationals. We did that drill he jumped, he touched 8 feet 6 off the ground with his knee.
Wow.
And
Crazy.
He PR'd by like 3 or 4 inches right before, a week before the championships. And so I knew he was ready.
Yeah.
You know, he was close at the nationals. He came down on, I think it was like 7.4 3/4, something like that.
Mhm.
7.5. So he was ready. He just didn't make it. But I mean, so I do these little drills, and that drill focuses on, the last 3 steps. You gotta speed up,
Sure.
drive up. So it focuses on the drive and the rise,
Yeah.
because you need to plant, you need to rise with the knee up, and then the takeoff leg rises up to the level of the drive knee, and
Right.
then you get your head back, rotate over the bar.
Right.
And so that drill emphasizes that, the takeoff, the drive and rise.
Yeah. I like leaving the takeoff leg straight for a while too, because if you watch people that lay out right away, almost as soon as the toes coming off the ground, they're swinging it back. I call it, swinging your landing gear up. And I'm like, you gotta ride for a while, right? As the bar goes up before that happens.
Yeah, as soon as you drop your knee, your hip rotation around the bar drops off dramatically.
Yeah. Yeah.
If and if not, stops.
Right.
So you'll see a jumper. I don't know how. If you drive the knee, hold it as you rise, and then get the head back, your hips are going to continue to rise as you rotate over around the bar.
Right. Right.
And so that's kind of like what that drill does.
Well, it seems to me like I'm not a physics master or anything, but I did take it a few times, along the road to the kinesiology degree and the master's degree in exercise science. So I was taught enough about center of mass and things like that, where I think after a while it just becomes kind of common sense, right? But if you look at most people here on this planet, if you were to, cut them in half at the hips, they would probably be heavier from their hips down, because your legs are so much bigger, unless you've got a huge torso, right? Mm-hmm. Our legs are the biggest, strongest muscles in our bodies: hip flexors, glutes, quads, hamstrings, big muscles. Okay. And when I drive that knee up, there's significant musculature and bones tied to that, right? So I've just done a tremendous increase in my center of mass simply by bringing that one knee way up. Mm-hmm. And if I leave it up as I'm going up, I always picture, I'm like, well, my center of mass is up. It's going to stay up. I don't want to drop it. Why would I do all that work to drive it up and then let it come back down before I hit my peak, like you're talking about, right? And that just makes sense to me. It always has. I always say, hey, your knee is like an elevator button. I said, if you want to go 7.2, you better program that knee to ride all the way up to 7.2 before you start thinking about doing anything else. Mm-hmm. And like you said, you get both legs level. That's a whole nother adventure. It may be a subject for another night. I do want to get into the topic of, how deep is too deep. I remember that whole battle between deep squats, then half squats, quarter squats, jump squats. Seen a lot of single leg training going on now. And I'm interested in that because of what you were talking about, which was sport specificity, event specificity, and what exactly do these muscles need to do this thing in particular. Like I've been thinking about this for a while. From what I've heard, and I've never done this research myself, but I've read stories about somebody telling stories about the ancient Greeks running down the runway in a long jump. We all know where the Olympics started. And they would run down the runway and be holding weights in their hands and then take off and drop the weights and keep going, right? And I've thought about that for a long time. I'm like, well, it makes sense to me in a lot of ways, in that it would be the simplest way to train your muscles to be stronger. It would be like putting extra weight on a horse, like when they go running, right? And then you strengthen them up, and then when they go to compete, you take the weight off. And then they're like, oh, wow, I'm running and I'm not carrying all this weight. I feel lighter, therefore I am lighter. I feel faster, therefore I am faster. Right. So if I train these muscles to drive my arms up, holding on to 5-pound dumbbells, and then I work on stepping onto a box and driving those arms up and trying to get some air, and being very specific to my style of arm drive, whatever that is, single arm, double arm, wouldn't that be better than, like you're saying, anything else? I mean, the two-handed toss overhead for the power jumper seems to me to be a no-brainer. For a single armor, maybe I need to do a single arm throw. I don't know. Do we do that? How specific do we get? There's so many great questions.
Well, you're working the stretch reflex when you're doing those kettlebell throws.
Yeah.
And it's not just the arms. Primarily, the primary benefit, because when you plant in the high jump, you think, okay, your leg is going to bend a little bit, right?
Sure.
But your upper body there's also a stretch reflex in your back, right? Because when you plant your back, you want to bend forward too, right? So when you do those backward throws, you're also working the stretch reflex of the back.
Absolutely.
So you think like that's for the arms, the throw. It is probably primarily it's working the back, but it's
working your takeoff because you're jumping back off of that also, right? I mean, it's not because
you're bending,
yeah,
you're bending forward and then exploding up.
Yeah.
So it's working the back. It's working that same thing that happens when you plant on the high jump.
Yeah.
But
absolutely. The question I had wasn't necessarily just arms. I understand what you're saying. Like I love the push press. I like a simple push press, dumbbells in either hand, quarter drop, not all the way down. Obviously, if I'm dropped way too down, too low, it's to me it's counterproductive. It's too slow of a movement, right? But if I can go quarter and then really jump so that the weight's moving, and then I just let my arms extend, it's not. I tell people right away. I'm like, you watch. I looked up one time because I didn't have any pictures of me doing it, and I'm sending the exercise to a client, and I said, I just got to look up something real quick, and I did on Instagram. I go push press. People are standing there like this, going with their arms, and I'm like, no, I don't need a push press. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, before I knew anything about kinesiology, I was watching the Superstars, the old Superstars competition. You remember that, when they'd have all the great athletes from all the sports competing, and they had. Some of the track guys were pretty good at clean and jerk. They would just quarter drop and punch up overhead, split their legs and catch and step under it. And the football guys would walk up and pick it up off the thing and just go and set it down. Military press. They didn't use their legs at all. They just walked up and bench pressed it overhead, And so I'm looking, even then I remember thinking, wow, that's really different. That other guy who's half the size of this guy got that thing up there, but he didn't use his arms. He used his legs. I learned that lesson early. Like, your legs are way stronger than your arms, number one. And, we got to do this explosively and quickly, right? So, God, there's so many topics, Ron. I'd like to get you pinned down. I want you to do a shameless.
Well, you know what? You know what? On the grounds of like how deep you want to go. So I invented a step-up machine. And it's actually in my second book, picture of it. I can send you a video of an exercise Sean did. It's step-up jumps, alternating step-up jumps. But I had this step-up machine where you could raise the step platform up and down.
Yes.
And I had it angled. It was a lever machine, so you held the weights you held the bar at the side. Okay. And it's picture like a pitchfork. You're holding the end of the pitchfork, the two sides.
Right.
And you're doing a step up on a box, but you're holding, instead of the weight on your back,
right,
you're holding it below your waist. So I made this machine. So if you if you raise the platform, so you're doing a deeper step, right?
Deeper step,
Deeper
yeah.
step up. You're primarily working the hamstring.
Right,
And then if you have it lower, you're working the quads
right.
primarily. So primarily we did it with the lowered platform. So it worked more the quads. But in the fall, sometimes I would have them go higher, work
Yeah,
the hands.
deeper
But
slope. Yeah,
but yeah, so I'm big on doing the single leg step ups rather. That's one thing I did in high school and college. I did step ups, but not really with weight. Sean did step ups with body weight, when he's 9 years old.
yeah,
So that was part of his workout, like 5 sets of 20 on each
yeah.
leg, where you kind of like, pound up on the box up and then land. So yeah, I don't think you need to go, full on. Maybe you need to go a little deeper if you're a power jumper.
Yeah,
But if you're like a quarter of the way down, if you're a speed jumper,
yeah,
and you can go pretty heavy
sure.
that way, you know. So I can send you a video of Sean doing the step up jumps, alternating step up jumps with my machine that I made.
Well, I wanted to throw this out here too, Ron. Again, we're here on Raise the Bar, and I'm talking with Ron Lee, the coach and father of Sean Lee, of UCLA fame and two-time state champ. And a training. You've trained two or three different between Sean's two and Harrison Steed. Did he win at 7-1 when he was a sophomore? He won state.
Yeah, he won.
So you had a couple state champions, which is awesome. Dude, shamelessly plug these books. Where can my, do you have them on a site where they're making you money, where people want to buy them and read them?
No, I was selling the first book I made in 2009. I published in 2009. It's called The Ultimate High Jump Manual.
Right.
And that was mainly technique. It was a technique book. And then I did another one that I published in 2017. But I was going through a divorce and this and that. My wife was selling the first high jump book online
Oh, wow. Yeah.
on Amazon. And then so in 2017, I finished it and I didn't sell it. I published it. I gave it to a few coaches like Jeremy Fisher. I gave one to him to review. Before I published it, I gave it to him to review and make suggestions. And that one's just on training, high jump training.
Right.
And it's got sample training plans for kids that are 9 years old up through college.
Right.
That work.
Right.
Harrison, the name of the game is with the coach, and the UCLA coach, he had 3 7-footers, including my son. They didn't know when they were going to peak or not,
Right.
or if they were going to. With my training plans, we do these exercises and you can test and know if they're going to peak. And so I lost my train of thought, what I was going.
Something about training. You had state champs. We were talking about too deep, not too deep. Whether they needed to lift a lot. You're talking about 9 years old. I'm imagining just their own body weight.
Well, we were talking about my books. So
yes.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at with my book, all my athletes peaked at the end of the season. If you look at Sean, championship meet he was in, he attempted a PR or he PR'd and broke a national record.
Right.
So same with Harrison Steed. When he jumped 7'1", his PR was 7 feet. Before that, he jumped 7'1", peaked at the state meet. So that's the name of the game if you're a coach, is you have to get your athletes and they have to buy into your training plan, and they have to believe that when it gets down to the championship preparation, a few weeks before the championship, they know they're ready to PR.
Yeah.
So and college coaches don't really do that. They're just, lift weights, do this running, maybe a little plyometrics, and, we'll reduce your weightlifting prior to the championships and you should PR. I mean, that's basically their methodology.
Right.
I'm kind of like old school European, maybe Russian style, where I have different phases that each phase, when you complete that phase, and the phase could be 9 weeks to 6 weeks long, each phase. When you end the phase going into the next one, there's a cumulative effect of the training from the prior phase.
Right.
And so by the time you get to the championship prep, we would be doing 30-meter sprints, 25-meter sprints, 30-meter sprints up the hill, up steep, up hills. In the fall, longer sprints, steeper hills. Towards the championship prep, really short hills, not as steep. Everything's quick at the end, quick and 100%.
Yep.
So, but the collegiate coaches, I haven't seen any that really have a plan.
Right.
And if you're a coach, when I was a coach, the first day of practice, I had the training plan from that day to the championship, all the way through, exactly what they were going to do every day. And I have records of Sean from 9 years old through high school. I know exactly what he did every day for that period for his training.
Right.
And another thing is that's very important in training is figuring out and getting rest days within the week.
Right.
If you're on like a 7 days cycle, whatever, during the fall, Sean probably trained 4 days a week.
Right.
3 days during the season, I know Dana Hills was, they were a competitor of Chirico Hills. Their coach had their jumpers jumping every day.
Oh, yeah.
The
powder at the end. Yeah.
Yeah. Sean jumped 1 day a week.
Yep.
Usually if there's a meet on Saturday, he's jumping Tuesday.
Yep.
Technique work. And then, he's still jumping. There's other jumps that we did,
boxes,
but
yeah.
not high jump.
Yeah.
Basketball dunking is something was really important. When he was younger, I had a rim in the back, portable rim in the back of the backyard. I even held the rim down a little bit. So it was like 8.5 feet. He's dunking a little ball on that,
Wow.
like 9 years old, 10 years old.
Yeah. That idea, either a rim that you can move or even like the football crossbar. I love the football crossbar, either for the single armor to reach up and dunk. Like, I watch some of these guys, some basketball players with these unbelievably large hands, right? When I was up until my junior year, I couldn't dunk because number one, I was always taking it up with one hand, and my hands weren't very strong or very big. And so when I went to throw it down, I would throw it off the back rim. You know, it wasn't any problem with the elevation. It was holding onto the ball. So one of the seniors that was jumping at the time in front of me, Dave Wicker, who was a 6'10" jumper, I had the same thing going in high school that you did. I was chasing after a guy who was a 6'10" guy. So he said, "Hey, just take it up with two hands, you know, and throw it down." And I was like, "Oh." And he goes, "Yeah, just like you're thinking, just like the high jump, you know." So I could reverse after a while, I could take it over the top, right? But it's like the idea to me that makes sense, especially as you're starting from the ground up. And if you're training, you know, gals that aren't 6'5" and playing in the NBA that can dunk basketballs, you know, I have some of the girl jumpers that I have trouble touching the 10-foot crossbar, you know, unless depends on the style and everything right now. And I'm working with freshmen mostly, but I'm like, even one that I have that's 6'1", she has trouble, you know, getting up to get that crossbar. So I keep thinking it'd be nice to have a rim that you can adjust, right? If you can dunk on a 9-foot rim, great, you know, then we'll move it up. It's very similar to the high jump. And same thing with that crossbar, you know.
Well, I had Sean when he did 3-step run up. He held, when he was little, he held a smaller little, you know, fake basketball thing. But when he got older, where he could hold a volleyball, because you can take the volleyball, you can bring it down, you can palm it, so you can bring it down, and the volleyball was not fully inflated, so you could grip it better.
Yeah.
So you can do the arm action, the drive. So yeah, his senior year, maybe his junior year, part of his junior, I put cinder blocks underneath the base of the rim, and he was dunking on 12-foot rim.
Wow.
So just like a 3-step jump. A lot of the drills I do 3 steps, so it's same in the high jump. You want to attack the plant, right? 1, 2, 3, and pound up.
Yep.
So yeah, 3-step, same angles, your approach, you know, and just go up as high as you can, drive and rise. That's my thing, drive and rise, and then dunk.
Yeah.
We used to always do that. If there was a meet on Saturday, he was dunking. That was the workout. Thursday was this is in the championship prep. He would dunk, warm up, and he would dunk on Thursday, rest Friday, jump Saturday.
Yeah.
But when you're in college, they have you doing something every day.
I know.
You know,
I know.
the day before they've got them doing all this. And I'm like, no, do your thing on Thursday, and then
Friday's off for sure. Yeah. And rest, maybe ice bath. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, those coaches that have their athletes jump all the time, you know, there are some when you're new jumper, you need to jump more. But if they jump a lot and they're practicing bad technique,
right,
bad habits, it's very hard to correct.
Yeah.
And that leads me to the point where you were saying, you know, you're a double arm gatherer.
Yeah.
Sean's a single arm gatherer.
Right.
He comes in a lot quicker. If you try to change the way they jump,
oh yeah, styles,
the way they gather,
yeah,
it can, you know, if I tried to make Sean do a double arm action, and he actually did that. He one year, senior year or junior year, I noticed when he gets slower, he was putting his arms together and bringing them back.
right.
And I'm like, I'm like, what are you doing?
Right.
Don't do that. Cause
Yeah.
it slows for him, it slows him down.
Sure. It slows your
Cause
mechanics
you're,
down because nobody runs with both arms going forward and back. Yeah.
yeah. So, but if you try to change, you gotta be careful because then it's going to change. It may negatively affect
Huh. Oh
three other
yeah.
things,
But
you
it
know?
has a huge effect. I think arms is one of the huge topics. We would go over this another time, but um, you know, looking first day, like I had an opportunity today to train two people I've never seen before, like first day. And right away I'm thinking, gosh, there's a whole book of things that I'd like to tell them to do so that I can start building this one particular habit from the ground up. So,
Mhm.
but, you're trying to get them off the ground. I had a guy that had no idea how to use his arms. He's running up to the bar, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, dude, he drove his arms about this high and then left them, and I'm like, hey, let's get those arms up, and that was like pulling teeth. And then, just trying to figure out which foot he took off, so I wasn't even broaching the subject of double arm or single arm yet, but that was like, that was coming way later. Right. But yeah, I've had also the experience of someone like you said, that's way more talented. Barbara Bachaka, the gal that I'm working with from Canada, we talked about switching to a single, and when we tried it and practice, it was just a disaster. It was just like she'd been a double armor for so long. And I think of my own training, in 92 I was 28 and I took my last shot at trying to train for the trials, and I worked with Doug Nordquist's coach Alan Hankel, and he was trying to teach me to get my visual to be off of the bar and to go to the far standard, or even I've actually I addended that or amended it to even something off the standard over here on the curve I would like better, but I couldn't do that. I mean, I worked on that for months, and admittedly, we worked together less than a year. He signed on late with me, and by the time I was 28, I'd been jumping since I was 12. So I had 16 years of habits, and that was changing what I was looking at as I was taking off was hugely problematic. So I don't ever assume that anybody can just, start making wholesale changes to everything. That's difficult. Yeah. Hugely difficult.
Yeah. If you start doing stuff like that, changing what you look, where you look,
Yeah.
that's not good.
Yeah.
It's gonna mess you up. I mean,
It depends.
it's
I mean, some
there's
people might be able to do it, but I don't think many could,
yeah, there's certain things that you shouldn't tell jumpers to do.
Right.
It's gonna screw them up,
Yeah.
you know?
Like throw your head back immediately
Yeah.
off the ground. Get that head
Cause
back.
I'm sure we've heard coaches telling our jumpers, do this or that, and you're like, no, don't tell them.
Yeah.
Cause you can get somebody thinking about something. Um, it's like playing golf. If you like, if you start thinking about, how you're swinging or doing this or that, it's going to totally mess you up,
Yeah.
because now you're thinking about that and you're not fluid.
Yes.
Same way with a high jump. You got
It's
to,
tough. Yeah, it's a tough edge. I keep telling my kids, I'm like, look, we're going to train on a lot of different things. You're going to know more about the high jump than you know about a lot of things. But I go, essentially, we're going to do all our work in the lab and at practice. And when it comes to meet times, you need to like disassociate almost. And it's like being a football player. It's like, I don't need a guy sitting there going, okay, now when the running back goes in motion, if it's this coverage, I've got the flat. And if it's this, I've got this and all that. It's like, they need to know. They got that in practice. I've had that experience. I say, hey, outside linebacker, we're in cover 3 deep. This guy goes out here. You got the, hook to curl, or you got the flat, whatever it is. And you can see them. They were inside backer the year before, and they're going, wait, I used to just have the running back or the fullback when he came right at me. And so now I got out, and they're thinking, and the play would happen and they wouldn't react. And you're like, dude, you see that move, you got to go. Right. Well, by the time you got done training it, after a while, they see the motion coming and they're already moving. You just learn the sequence, and it's like it becomes, fused with your DNA or whatever. You you don't want to be thinking. If I put down a list of all the checklists of technique little tweaks that I've got, you're talking a couple page outline. So I can't sit there and go, okay, now remember, don't forget to cycle. Everything's about your acceleration pattern. I want you to go heel toe, reach your arms back, drive them up overhead, get that knee across. It's like, how many things do you tell them, right? You can't tell them 25 things. So you watch them take that first jump, and then I'm gonna be like, hey, everything was perfect. You just ran like a turtle shot out of a slow person walking backwards. You weren't going fast enough. So let's just pick up speed. If I'm going to tell them anything, it's usually going to be one thing, because what are you going to be able to focus on? You're getting ready to jump. It's like, okay, what was that one thing that he said? Because you never know what their brain isn't operating like your brain is at that time either. I'm the one who's all calm and collected because I'm just sitting there watching. I'm not all juiced up and excited and, glancing around real crazy. I'm like, hey, eyes here. Look, you need to accelerate. That's it. You were walking, you're too close to the bar. Don't forget, move back 4 inches. Don't be afraid to hit the gas. Elias, little Baru at Long Beach City, he used to tell me that. And I tell it to my kids all the time on third jumps. I don't usually even get technical on third jumps. I said, hey, when in doubt, run faster. Because that's what Elias told me. It's like I'm channeling my Yoda. I don't come up with anything different. Well, hey, Ron, this is way overdue. We're gonna have to do this again. I don't want to keep you up all night, and I don't want to sour you on coming back because I'm going to be listening to this again and again. One last shameless plug for our listeners, and now that the divorce is final, maybe you can get to selling some of the second editions of the first book and then the first edition of the second book. So what were they called again? And is there any way that people can get a hold of those?
I still have some of my 2009 book. It's called The Ultimate High Jump Manual. The second one is that came out that I published in 2017 is called it's called High Jump Training.
Okay.
So it's basically one's technical and one's training specific. So, wow. But I haven't sold. I think the high jump training book that I made, it's like 300 pages. I think I ordered like 7 or 8, 10 copies. And I've given them away to a few people, but I have to look. I just have one in my house right here, but
hey.
I think I obviously I still have the file
obviously
saved, but I just kind of like, Sean graduated, went to college, and then I kind of quick, I was only coaching him.
Right.
And then, I haven't coached since 2021, something like that.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
But
well, hey.
Although I might coach at Trabuco Hills, they want me to. Of
course.
They wanted me to. It's a very rough hiring process, and I'm like, I don't want to go through all that, and you have to take these classes, and so today I told them I'll just come as a volunteer. Don't pay me.
Yeah.
I'll come a couple of days a week, and that's good. So
I
might. We'll see if I get. I kind of like lost the passion.
Yeah.
For it,
Yeah. It's so not easy work. Well, hey, Ron, we greatly appreciate your time, your expertise, and experience, both as a coach, as an athlete first, and then a high-level coach. Congratulations on multiple state champions. There's people listening, I'm sure, that are like, I would love to have one. Having more than one is awesome. And, obviously, we got to stay in touch. I will be asking you for copies of both if you're willing to part with them. And then you mentioned golf, man. We got to, if you're a golfer, we got to go do that because that's where I get a lot of my best work done is on the golf course. I think there's so many parallels between my two favorite comparisons. Well, there's three: high jump with pole vault, high jump with golf, and high jump with field goal kicking. Because I think the mentality of field goal kickers and high jumpers are like identical. Like when I was on, I was on. If I thought I was going to miss, I was going to miss. And that applies to golf also. But that's when we get into sports psychology. So we'll save that one for another time. But dude, long overdue. I'm glad we got to do this. Appreciate it.
Yeah, maybe we can do it again.
All right, sir. Thanks for your time, Ron. All right.
All right. Okay.
Talk soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. All right. Let's see.